It's time to join Montana's very own and your voice for agriculture, Talkin' Ag Lane Nordlund, for today's LaneCast.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here on the LaneCast Ag Podcast with the Western Ag Network, and we're going to take a look at what our local livestock markets were averaging across the western United States here this week. We'll have some feeder cattle, slaughter cattle, and even a few thousand head of sheep to report on here today. If you've not done so, make sure and subscribe to the LaneCast Ag Podcast or the Western Ag Network wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. If you're tuning in on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and follow along as we have content every single day, not just dealing with livestock markets, but all the top issues impacting farmers and ranchers across the western United States. Hey, today's program is brought to you by our friends at AgRisk Advisors. For more information on all they provide producers in the countryside, just visit AgRisk Advisors online. Well, let's take a look at what the cattle markets were bringing here this week. At the Miles City Livestock Commission there in eastern Montana, on Tuesday, they sold over 1,300 head of cattle. Slaughter cows were mostly steady to firm, with packers and private buyers both showing very good demand for cows as tight supplies and demand continue to be seen. Packers opted to put a small portion of thin cow offerings on feed to hold for the upcoming 4th of July holiday. With that said, a large majority of those cows selling in Miles City were cull cows, with slaughter cows bringing $102 to $145 a hundredweight. Slaughter bulls priced at $122 to $168 a hundredweight there in Miles City. They also had some nice replacement cattle going through the ring. 2 to 4 year old stock cows $145 to $217 a hundredweight, while 2 to 4 year old stock cows $140 to $209, and some short term cows bringing $2,300. Now, on the dairy end of things, at Centennial Livestock's monthly dairy feeder cattle sale there in Fort Collins, Colorado, over 1,800 head selling, and demand was very good. Dairy feeder steers and dairy feeder heifers traded sharply higher across the board, with the 3 to 3.5 weight steers $307 to $422, 3.5 to 4 weights $3 up to $4.21, 4 to 4.5 weight dairy steers $3 to $407, 4.5 to 5 weight dairy steers there in Fort Collins $262 to $3.97, with the 5 to 5.5 weight steers $270 to $3.47 a pound. Again, those are dairy cattle selling this past week at Centennial Livestock there in Fort Collins, Colorado. To southwest Montana, let's look to Montana Livestock Auction in Ramsay, where just over 1,300 head of cattle sold. Slaughter cows brought a price of $1 to $1.56. Heiferettes $155 to $212. Slaughter bulls $150 to $227 a hundredweight. They also had some pretty nice pairs selling, with heifer pairs seeing a price of $3,025 up to $3,350. 3 to 4 year old pairs $3,025 up to $3,475. 5 to 7 year olds $2,800 up to $3,350, and some short termers $2,500 up to $3,100. Now let's go to Salina, Utah at Producers Livestock Auction, where we saw 672 head sell this week. The feeder steers weighing 4.5 to 500 pounds, $3.12 to $3.29. 5 to 5.5 weights, $280 to $310. 5.5 to 6 weights, $271 to $290. With the 6 to 6.5 weights there in Utah, seeing a price of $2.50 to $2.80 a pound. A pretty big week in Nebraska at Ogallala Livestock as well, with over 6,200 head of cattle selling. Ogallala Livestock was also celebrating 73 years in business. A very good turnout from customers. An appreciation barbecue was held as well, so a good turnout of buyers, spectators, and everyone showing up there at Ogallala Livestock here this week, with the 4.5 to 5 weight feeder steers priced at $3.32 to $3.81. 5 to 5.5 weight steers in Ogallala $3.40 to $3.79. 5.5 to 6 weights $3.33 to $3.43, with the 6 to 6.5 weight steers $2.90 to $3.11. And the heavier steers there in Ogallala weighing 7 to 750, 281 to 290. The 8.5 to 9 weights, $2.50 to $2.61. Well, we'll take a look at more of those feeder cattle and slaughter cattle prices from our local livestock markets across Western Ag Network country. But first, these words from our sponsors at AgRisk Advisors.
Ready for a real PRF partner?
He was willing to track us for a year and provide that data back to us for a year. That's a guy making a pretty big investment.
At AgRisk Advisors, this isn't our first rodeo. We are one of the most experienced in pasture rangeland forage. Honesty, commitment, trust. Many companies use these words. At AgRisk Advisors, we earn them.
Again, a big thank you to our friends at AgRisk Advisors for sponsoring today's LaneCast Ag Podcast, taking a look at our livestock markets. Well, let's head to Billings, Montana, to the Billings Livestock Commission, where mostly slaughter cows went through the ring, over 1,175 head selling. Slaughter cows mostly $3 to $4 lower on those boning, and lean cows, breaking cows, sold sharply lower as well in a narrow comparison. As we mentioned, the majority of the cow offering was purchased to feed this week. Feeding cows sold mostly $10 lower as last week. Saw very good demand from additional buyers in the marketplace compared to this week. Those slaughter cows in Billings bringing $82 up to $146 a hundredweight. Slaughter bulls $132 to $165. Heading up to Montana's Highline, Glasgow Stockyards, Glasgow, Montana, saw over 669 head sell. The steady trend was seen for slaughter cows and bulls this week. Those cows brought a price of $95 to $145 a hundredweight. Slaughter bulls, $140 all the way up to $175 a hundredweight on those bulls going through the ring. Also, some pairs selling in Glasgow. Heifer pairs priced at $3,000 to $3,750. 3 to 5 year old pairs $3,000 to $3,500. On Friday, Torrington Livestock Auction had over 1,200 head of mostly slaughter cows selling. Those slaughter and feeder cows traded $2 to $3 higher, with slaughter bulls trading mostly steady to weak. Prices for the slaughter cows, $136 to $152. Slaughter bulls, $160 to $175. And replacement cattle selling there in Torrington, we saw 2 to 4 year old stock cows bring a price of $2.15. Now, I mentioned at the start, we have a few reports in sheep country coming out today. We saw a video sale, the Western video auction that is, market some nice sheep and lambs this past week. We saw an outstanding set of feeder lambs, 925 head, weighing 95 pounds, bring a price of $222. Also, 280 head of slaughter ewes, priced at $80, weighing 170 pounds, and 400 head of 1 to 2 year old replacement ewes were valued at $320 a head. Heading to South Dakota now, to the St. Onge Newell Sheep Yards. Over 733 head sold. Demand was pretty good, especially for heavier lambs this week. Those feeder lambs weighing 84 pounds, saw a price of $234 to $236. 103 weight feeder lambs, $212 to $214. Slaughter sheep on the ewe end of things, bringing $59 to $85 for those slaughter ewes. Also, Centennial Livestock Auction there in Fort Collins hosted their sheep and goat auction. Feeder lambs and slaughter lambs traded $10 higher, while ewes and bucks traded unevenly steady. Slaughter kids traded $17 higher, while nannies, bucks, and wethers traded unevenly steady. Breaking down those prices, feeder lambs weighing 55 pounds saw a price of $235 to $250. Slaughter sheep, $51 up to $147 for ewes. And those finished kids seeing a price of $75 all the way up to $223. Nannies and does saw a price of $90 up to $450 across all the classes there for those nannies and does. Some outstanding prices there in Fort Collins this past week. And finally, Billings, Montana's public auction yard saw over 2,200 head of stock sale, mostly slaughtered lambs, which were $15 to $20 higher on lambs over 80 pounds. Lambs under 80 pounds were too lightly tested to develop an accurate market trend, as most of these offerings were purchased to feed. The $185 to $252 trend was seen for wool and short slaughtered lambs, while the hair breeds brought a price of $197 to $247. Feeder lambs weighing 60 to 69 pounds, $258 to $267, with the 76 to 86 weight lambs, $246 to $258 and a penny. Again, that's a quick glance at just a few of our local livestock markets that we cover each day on the Western Ag Network radio programs. I want to thank you for joining us for a quick livestock market recap from our local livestock markets across the West here today on the LaneCast Ag Podcast and the Western Ag Network. If you haven't done so, we'd appreciate you subscribing, whether you're listening or watching this on a podcast platform or tuning in on YouTube. Make sure and subscribe, share, and tune in every single day and week as we offer the top headlines that are impacting farmers and ranchers across the western United States each and every day. Again, thanks for joining us on LaneCast Ag Podcast. I'm Lane Nordlund. Until next time, take care, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the LaneCast with Talkin' Ag, Lane Nordlund. Don't forget to subscribe to the LaneCast on your Apple or Android devices. We look forward to joining you next time on the LaneCast.